L&D and I think about games, I pretty much think of you first, and then kind of go from there, because I know that you're a gamer for sure. And then you inviting these our esteemed group of guests that are on here: Jonathan Hill, Jacqueline Hutchinson, Jonathan Rock. I can't ask for more. So this is a wonderful group. I'm looking forward to what the group of you are going to be talking about. How video games make me a better learning professional. And I'll let you all do introductions of yourselves while I hide myself from the screen.
All right. Well, thank you, Luis, for having us. And I think it's really kind of a full circle moment because the people that are here on this panel, we all have connections to this community. So it's really great to be coming back. TLDC is actually where I first met J Rock. And then through that, I've met Jack and Jay Hill. And Jack, we went to the conference. Was that in Phoenix? Yeah. So we did that. And yeah, so it's really great to be here. And talking about a topic that I love near and dear. Games certainly help with my mental health on a daily basis. And so I thought what we would do today is just talk about how our love of games, everybody here in this panel loves games in various capacities, how it really informs our practice as learning and development professionals. And then we have some examples of things that we're going to show of like where we've taken game elements and things that we've built. So if that sounds good, go ahead and give me an emoji and I'll toss it around for folks to give a quick introduction there. So I'll toss it to the lovely, the pro herself, Jacqueline Hutchinson, for intro.
Thank you. That's very kind. Hi, everybody. I'm Jack Hutchinson. Been in L&D for over 25 years. Been a gamer for longer. The very first game I ever played was a text-based game called Sands of Egypt. And it was on a friend's computer. I think I was 14 at the time. Well, that's the first real learning game, I would say. I played games before that. We had Atari and stuff, but in terms of computer and video games, that's the first game I played that had an impact, and I've remembered it ever since. I do love games, but haven't been able to play for the last year or so. So this is going to be fun. John Hill?
Hi, everyone. John Hill. I'm a UK-based e-learning developer. I'm also a manager at Entain, a gaming and sports betting company. So in my past, I've also worked for an insurance company. And you'd think that those two environments would be very kind of antithetical of each other, the opposite of each other in terms of gaming. But what I've been able to do over the course of my career is find an outlet for my love of kind of retro games from like the 80s and 90s in particular, and channel that into course design in a way that appeals to a wide cross-section of my audience, both in the insurance industry and more recently in the gaming and sports betting industry. And there's some surprising parallels between those two sectors as well in terms of how the audience respond to this type of experience. So I've very much used gaming as a kind of jumping off point for a lot of my ideas, a lot of my course themes and concepts. I can remember playing River Raid on the Atari 2600, very, very, very young age, trying to land on the aircraft carrier. And another game that kind of really sticks in my memory was Another World on the Amiga, which was like another great immersive game where your choices had consequences. And then, of course, in the UK, we've got Granny's Garden, that great text-based game where you have to make different choices on the old BBC computer. So there's lots of inspiration, and anyone who's been familiar with my work will kind of see those threads coming together in some of the projects that I share. So happy to be here and happy to geek out about it.
Awesome. And J Rock, are you able to? There he is. All right.
I wondered why his camera was off. Now we know.
Makes sense. Makes sense. We can't hear you. Can anybody hear him? I can't hear him.
Yeah, but okay. the appearance is amazing.
Yeah, I mean the aesthetic is great, right? Okay, awesome. All right, fix your audio, and when your audio is fixed, we'll let you introduce yourself. But I agree with Nick. I think that the appearance speaks for itself, right? So I mean, how do you even top that? So let's go ahead and hop right into it. So really just wanted to talk about just how games can really impact the work that we do. So Jay Hill, I don't know if you want to kick us off with a great example that you have, if you want to talk through one of those and just talk about the gaming elements that you have in it, and then I think we can kind of debrief and keep going from there.
Yeah, sure thing. I'll just share my screen. So this will take a moment, and I'll do that whole staring at the buttons while everyone watches me. Let's get this sorted out.
Are you back? Can you introduce yourself, J Rock?
Yes, my name is Jonathan Rock. I make compliance training, refresher compliance training, and you can too.
All right.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. So I'm going to show you an example that I developed for a company called Commercial Express, an insurance company. I'll just give you a bit of background on this. That company had a learning management system, which was not only for the benefit of its staff, it was also shared with its customers as a perk of doing business with them. And the insurance industry is a funny industry. It tends to be either very new people, so very young people, or people who've been doing it for years, or donkey's years, as we say in the UK. And finding a format sometimes for content and learning content that appeals to quite a young audience, quite an older audience at the same time, was always a kind of tricky thing to do. And particularly if you wanted to, make it kind of punchy, engaging. And for this purpose was to put information about a new product in front of those two audiences in the way that kind of engage with them. So there's a bit of dad punnery in here, some bad dad jokes, and you'll see that as it progresses. But the idea is I've taken what you could describe as kind of 16-bit style game. And for those who are kind of younger, it's retro. And for those who are a bit older, with a little bit of white in their beard, perhaps like me, it's nostalgic. And that's one of the spaces in which you can operate in doing this. You may have seen in the comments, I've just shared a little GIF of Jeff Goldblum's character in Jurassic Park saying, just because you scientists could do this doesn't mean they should. So I'm not saying that every course needs to look like this, but we had an audience with this business where we could get away with something like this, and it was very well received. So you should be hearing sound. If you don't, it doesn't matter, but it's part of the experience as well.
I'm not hearing any sound, Jay Hill.
Okay, no worries. So it's probably best we don't hear sound because there's quite a lot to it. But what you can see here, we've got a kind of Star Wars pastiche, and we've launched straight into what I'd call a kind of title screen, a gate screen. Rather than having lots of aims and objectives like computer games, we have a call to action, and that call to action is you need to escape with the information on this product in order to win the day. So the game then opens, and there's a very basic interface, almost like a text-driven interface inspired by earlier computer games. And this explains the basis of the interaction. So what we're seeing here is that you need to collect data cubes as you go to find out the information, or as you'll see, you're given the choice of skipping that information. And that puts the learner straight away in a very kind of actions have consequences situation in terms of gamifying the experience. Because for those people who think they know the answers, they're going to skip. For those people who are less sure, they've got the ability to look at that. So I'm going to go through this and show you how that works. There's also, like in most computer games, a map that tells you where you are. So it's always good to give learners an idea of where they are, kind of inventory of how far they've come and where they are. And instead of a score, we've got a health bar. So again, we're looking at the game mechanics that are replacing traditional L&D measures like your score or a percentage. And that's giving very immediate feedback in a way that a game does too. So if I move on and show you how this works. So first data cube comes along. We've got a summary of what might be in it. The preliminary scan indicates it covers information on what the policy is designed to cover. But you know what? I've been doing this a little while. I don't need to read that, so we're going to skip. So we can skip and you can jump over that item. This scan says that the information is on how the policy is rated, but okay, I'm going to swallow my pride a bit here. I've been doing this a while, but I might just want to have a look at that. So the idea is that it's a very kind of quick access to the information that you need to see. And you can then review that at your leisure, and then you'll come up against some obstacles. So this is a multiple choice question disguised as an obstacle. So here what we're seeing is 3 options to the question, and had we reviewed the data cube that contained this information, we'd be we'd be answering this question straight away. We've also got the option to go into that inventory and take a look and see what can help us before we answer the question. So we're offering support to the learner before they can progress, which is a tactic you see employed in games a lot of the time. Or you can just plow on ahead. You know this, you've got this, you know which buttons to mash in order to get through. So let's pop an answer in and see what happens. And we got the right answer. We got through, so we're going to move on. So there's another corridor, same mechanism. So again, you're not going to sit watching me do this. We're going to skip because I know this. I don't need the answers. I'm going to skip again. Don't need the answers. I'm going to skip again. I'm going to get to the end of the game as quickly as possible. We'll get another question and see how we get on. So here we've got the option to review the data, but I don't need to review the data. Clearly, and Cara would back me up here, the biggest number is always the correct one, isn't it? No, it's not. So now I'm in trouble. I've lost a bit of life. My score has come down and I haven't been able to blow the door, so I'm going to have to force myself through the door. There we go. So I've lost a few credits on my life there. So here again, we've got another option where we can look at the info cubes or not. So let's have just a quick look at some of them. So let's take a look at this one perhaps. And we've got a bit of information about the policy. But let's crack on. Let's see how far we can push our luck. So let's have a look and see if we can enter the code to get out. Okay. Do I know the answer to that? I think I might, but perhaps let's just jump back in and just double check. So like a lot of games, do we allow people the ability to kind of pause, reflect, go back the long way around, retry, respawn? These are all principles that I like to include in courses, even when they're not designed to look like a computer game. So let's do this again. The answer is manual. It was contained in this data cube, so we'll just pop that in. And let's see where this takes us. And again, here we go, and off we go. So it's just as well we don't have the sound now, because there's some loud sound effects coming, which might be a bit jarring. So here we're linking what's happening to the content. It's talking about working at heights. We're going up in an elevator. It's a superficial link, but what we're kind of doing is we're having the scenery reinforce in part the content that's being presented in text. We're given the fact about the policy here, and we come out of the lift. And here we go. So we're at the final hurdle here to get out of the Death Star. So let's have a look at this. But the cube's encrypted, and we just need to figure out the answers to these. So these would be based on everything that we've read. We did just read that we were going up at height, that it's 20 meters, so that we know that that's true. But they're all true, aren't they? No, they're not. I've lost a bit of life. I haven't answered this correctly, but I've got a chance to change. And there we go. There's the correct answer. And we've now got a list of trades that this policy favours. It's a commercial policy that insures against public liability and things like that. And again, just the game is just kind of throttling your progress a bit. We can't move on until you've looked at all the scrolling panel. And then once you've looked at the scrolling panel, the landing chute comes down, and then we're off and away. So now we're going to escape. We're going to try and achieve that mission objective and see how well we've done. So you can imagine the sound effects. The hyperdrive's on. Yeah, we've managed to score the minimum of 75% to get out of it. And that is as quickly as most people perhaps would have done that course.
Can we stop for just a sec, Jay Hill?
Yeah.
I would like to ask you a few questions
Sure.
from the applicability side. Love your games. I love your work. So I gush about them all the time. And I think they're so creative. You really do pull in a lot of the elements that make gaming engaging and fun and replayable. What I'd like to know, though, is in that particular instance, with the audience that you had, was there a positive reaction to that game? Did they adopt it? Did they enjoy it? Did the brokers or insurance agents apply what they learned and like it? What can you tell us about the success of that?
Well, what we did see is that people who had studied the policy suite of courses, so there'd be different games, different gamified courses for each of the products that that company offered. What we did see is that those companies who spent the most time in the system and spent the most time in particular on those courses tended to sell more of our policies. And that was based on interviews we carried out with them, down to their fluency with some of the key facts and features of those policies as illustrated by a lot of these courses. And a lot of the staff who are in that position tended to be newer staff, front of shop staff, who were having to kind of deal with customers with new products and record this information quickly. So there are some principles there that, if you replay it, if we'd failed that course, we would have been hit by an asteroid and you have to kind of start again. But the whole experience is very contained. It's fitting in around their work. It can be done in a few minutes at a time. And they're either by virtue of the associations made in the course or by sheer force of repetition getting that information. But they're not going to repeat it unless they enjoy it. So there's a kind of double-edged kind of sword. Was it for everybody? No. Some people didn't like it. The majority did, and it achieved its stated aim of raising awareness about that product. But what we also did in that organisation was make sure that all of the product courses were different themes, so people didn't get bored of the one theme. So although it did say Princess Leia ability will return, she didn't. Always leave the audience wanting more. And there's other formats that I used that organisation. There was a Sin City style one. There's an Indiana Jones style one. There's some more obvious ones, like a kind of Monopoly based one as well. Which was talking about property insurance. So there are opportunities to link the theme to the content, but also focus on keeping it short and sweet to drum the information into people.
Awesome.
It's not a full kind of Bloom's taxonomy of, we're not getting people to that create level with this information. We're getting them to kind of be able to recall it in certain situations.
Thank you.
I've just got one more quick example for my current role. So the company I work for at the moment deals largely with sports betting, and things like the Grand National are big events. Our contact centre staff are very time pressed, so that when they're getting contacted by customers with queries on their bets, they don't have a lot of time. So we needed to just have a reinforcement exercise ahead of the Grand National to just pick out some key points and just make sure that those key points were understood. So what we have here is a gamified horse race. And again, like most games, you get to pick your own avatar. So we've got a pretty simple choice here between four colours, blue. And here, what we're doing, the game element we're introducing here is, it's a 10 out of 10 test. You need to get 80%. The mythical L&D 80%, that means that you are okay. But what we're encouraging here is the person to bet on how well they will do. So here we're going to say, I'm going to get 10 out of 10. And let's see what happens if we do all that. So your progress through this is represented by the progress of your horse. So you've chosen blue, the track's highlighted blue. And at the moment, we're kind of not quite in the lead, but we're kind of edging forward now. And it's another way of presenting a score without necessarily giving a score. Your actions have consequences. So in this instance, we're not doing very well. I don't think we're going to get 10 out of 10, but let's see how we get on. So each time you answer the question, there's some mechanics in the back that kind of adjust your position or that of the computer opponents. And here we go. We may have kind of edged ahead, but we haven't got the necessary score. through falling short, and we've lost the bet. So what was attached to this was a promotion that said if you complete the game and get into the category of scoring at least 8 out of 10 and betting correctly on what you would score, we're both setting the learners' expectations for their current level of knowledge and also setting an expectation for what we would like to see. And those people who scored between 8 and 10, those that scored the highest in their department were put into a draw, and there was a prize attached to it. So there was an incentive here to measure your own abilities, predict your own abilities, strive to hit that, but then maybe repeat it to get a higher score, because somebody across the way might have got 10 out of 10 and you only got 9 out of 10. So they're going to supersede you in the prize draw that's attached to this. So that although that activity was slightly outside of the course was set up to support that activity in a way that just allowed people to kind of push themselves, test themselves, and that repetition and reward element that you see in a lot of games. Again, very short format. From an instructional design point of view, a 50-50 shot on each question. It's not a thorough basis of assessment, but this was about reinforcing some pain points we'd experienced at other horse racing events in order to just kind of drum that information into people, but also offer an incentive for them to take part. So that's all I've got to share in terms of visuals, but I'm happy to answer any questions anybody's got, or we can move on and listen to somebody who knows what they're talking about.
I think you do know what you're talking about, but we did get some questions as you were going through that. I've been trying to watch the Q&A. So Bill's wanting to know about your tech stack. What product did you use to create those?
They're both built in Storyline. The first one, the GIF, the sprite character was from Unity and imported into Storyline. And the second example was built in Storyline, but with some basic vectors, which I manipulated in Illustrator, just to get the color scheme.
All right. And then he was also wanting to know, oh, and I'm so sorry. I just realized there's an I at the end of that. So please, I'm sorry. But is there a link to play either of these on your own? You probably have some kind of example on the Heroes website, right?
These aren't live at the moment, but I will pop my portfolio link in the chat where there are similar examples of courses that are built using the same principles. Thank you for the questions.
Yep. One more. How long did it take you to develop those?
The horse racing game came together pretty quickly, to be honest. Maybe a couple of days. The layability, I learned a lot of lessons on that one, which I've applied since. So I'm quicker at doing those now. But I was a one-man band at that operation, one-person e-learning department. It took me about 2 weeks to get that working to that standard.
Yeah.
So how many variables did you have in that module?
The Star Wars themed one, or the
Star Wars one.
The Star Wars one, surprisingly few actually.
Really?
There aren't that many variables. Not specifically built or added that because a lot of what the interactions there are actually just free-form question slides. So the main variables built in, your score, all of that's kind of built in. There weren't too many variables that I needed to add to that one. The runners and riders piece is full of variables, because essentially I've got it's JavaScript without being JavaScript. It's a series of triggers that move the position of you or the opponent based on your performance. And there's lots of variables kind of handing off information and trading information in the background with each slide load on that. So surprisingly, although it's the simpler interface, that one's got the most variables to achieve that mechanism.
So let's say that after watching this today, someone is really excited to go out and try to create their own adventure game or their own horse race game, and they know they're going to need a bunch of triggers. What are you going to suggest to them to help them organize their variables and triggers?
In much the same way as others would advise you for a branching scenario, it's almost like another layer on your branching scenario. So not just what information is shown to the user based on their decision, but what outcomes are attached to those decisions. And it's almost like another layer over a branching scenario. So not only does you move to a different slide, but what goes with you. So, for instance, the Star Wars theme piece, there's a variable that tracks the score, which then tracks and changes the status of the health bar. So there's certain variables that are going to have to follow you through the course. So what things remain static, what things will change throughout the course, and make sure that you've got enough variables to pinpoint and track and administer those changes as they occur throughout the game. And start small and build up, because it can kind of tip over otherwise.
What happens when you run out of health in the Star Wars game?
If you run out of health, you kind of she visibly she goes a bit grayer. But there's only 4 questions, so you have to basically get that 4th question wrong repeatedly, and she basically starts to grey out.
Okay.
At that point, you need to just get on the ship and go. There isn't a kind of
so there's no fail state.
There's no like fatality.
Okay. Because I like doing those.
Well, you could have it like Lego Batman, or the Lego Indiana Jones, where you lose all your coins, and yes, looks like you fall off a cliff, but you come back and here you are. Now collect some more coins so you can get your health up.
Well, that kind of plays into my first example, though, because I was tasked with creating an e-learning it was basically, they gave me 2 posters. They said, we got this fist to 5, which like shows how, when you're voting on something in a meeting, like how much you support it. It's not just like yes or no. It's like 1 finger, 2 fingers, that kind of thing. And then another one was 5 degrees of commitment. And they wanted me to create a course, and so I created it. And my boss wanted to test it with a member of leadership, and so she sat down and she started taking it, and we were just behind her watching her taking notes, right? And she just immediately started just hammering the next button, just like click speed simulator, and got to the quiz question and couldn't answer it, and like got irritated. And like, it took her a little bit to get through, like took her longer than 10 seconds to get through the class, right? And the whole time this is happening, my boss is like leaning back behind her back going like, what is going on? She knows we're doing this for testing, right? I'm like, hey, this is how we've trained most people to take e-learning, right? The most efficient path through becomes just hammer the next button and then answer obvious quiz questions, right? So he was like, so what should we do? Should we make the quiz questions easier? I was like, no, by no means. Let's make it so the most efficient path through is to pay attention and know what you're talking about when you get to the quiz. So I'm gonna see if I can share this. Share screen.
While you're doing that, though, J-Rock, I just want to say, the hitting next is not unique. Lots of people do it, and one of the organizations I worked in, the fellas didn't want to do the training, so they put a paperclip in between the enter key and the key above it that held the key down.
No.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
So that they could just get through the e-learning.
That's
and then every once in a while they
right
noticed that there was like a knowledge check, right, that they had to answer.
Yeah.
So
that's a good hacker. So I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but this is the point where, he's just explained the learning. And then I have this woman character kind of come in and say, hang on there, Sonny. And the whole thing is like kind of like dialogue based, where you have, sometimes it's only one choice, but sometimes you have different things you can say. So we say, who's she? You've lost some already. Some will just click through as fast as they can without reading anything. And you could say, well, not me. Or you could say, I was totally going to do that. And then she says, here, this will up the stakes. And she holds up a placard with lives equals 4. She says, what happens if I run out? She says, you'll have to start the section all over. Still up for it? We've got this. Right? And so now, when they go through it, I'm just going to try and speed through it as they would. Sure. Now they've got to hook these up together to get the right answer. And hopefully it didn't just put them in the right order. And again, like with John's example, you can let them skip through, but then offer them the material again while they're at the point of need, because that will help it become more, puts hooks in it for the memory. But if I submit it, it says that isn't correct. Please try again. I click try again. And all of a sudden, here she is. Boom. There goes one of your lives. Right? So you lose all your lives. You go back to the beginning of the section. And by using the video game concept of a fail state, now we've upped the stakes so they pay more attention. And we show them that your time will be rewarded for the focus that you give this instead of just how fast you can click through. I changed, because that's really how every e-learning is a game. You want to get the reward of completion at the end. And You've got 4 different types of gamers, right? You got social gamers, you got the min-maxers, and like the people that are trying to hack or break the system. That's a valid way of playing, is just getting through it as quick as possible. So now I'm like playing to the way they play their games. Yeah. Any questions about that or any other comments? I've got other stuff I could share, but I don't want to hog the spotlight. So I'm gonna shut up and let Jack and Cara.
Oh no, if you've got other examples, go ahead.
Okay, sure. I'll just keep going then. So after that, this is one I've shared on TLDC before, but I had a bunch of, it was an annual compliance refresher training. So I had a year to do it. It's refresher. This isn't their first time learning this stuff. It's just meant to call it back to mind, right? So a lot of people roll their eyes at that and think, well, that's the most boring training there is, right? But in my mind, that gives us a lot of latitude to play with it and do the fun stuff that we want to. So I'd been watching a lot of Netflix at the time, and I was really into Stranger Things. So I created this course, and as I was looking at the bullet points of the list of factoids that I was trying to create, I thought, what if those were power-ups? What if instead of just barfing information on them and then testing their short-term memory, what if they have to find those and use them in the game? So I use this technique where we just have a giant, here, let me see if it's active. I have a giant slider in the background, and based on the movement of the slider, it animates the character. And then these little points will show up, and then each of these are the factoids they need to collect. You collect one, and now you see down here, the bottom right corner of the screen, I've got 1 out of 4.
Hang on,
So,
J-Rock.
Yeah, I think you're sharing the wrong screen. Sorry,
Yeah,
Cara.
you're not sharing it yet.
Oh, man. Thank you for telling me. Because you guys are like, oh, I'm just looking at that old thing. Here we go. Let's stop sharing. Still getting used to how Airtable works, y'all. This one is Stronger GMPs. Okay, so just think of all the stuff I just said and picture if you were watching this while that happens. So here's my slider, and you can see the character as they're walking, or as the slider moves, they're animating, and it might be a little bit I don't know, with streaming it might be a little bit jaggy, but here, so she's at the toilet. I click this, and now here's protect product, protect people, wash your hands well each time you use the bathroom. This isn't the kind of stuff we should have to tell people, but we still kind of do. So you collect that, and then down here you see 2 out of 4 GMPs collected. And hopefully by having the imagery of where they need to do this step, it helps them remember when they're in that location in their own home. Got a picture of a toothbrush. I got the sink. Brush your teeth before your shift. Hey, that's good advice for y'all too. And then now that I get to the shower, I'm going to grab the 4th one. I'm going to collect it. And because I got 4 to 4, I can transition. I have this hot, steamy shower. It just fades to white. And then we get to the car. So I won't show you the whole thing. Just to tell you that as you collect those, when you get to the quiz, you got to fight Demogorgons, and you're shooting a slingshot at them. And the bullet points that you've collected are your actual ammunition. And so you ask, first it asks you a question about the what category does this question fall into? And that lets you choose what type of ammunition, and then it asks you the actual question. And if you chose the right category, then you're going to do more damage, and you can get through the quiz in only 3 questions if you accurately assess the category. If not, it takes you 5. And if you get the question wrong, the monster hits you for half your health. And you get 2 questions wrong, and it kills you, and then you have to start over at the last checkpoint, right? And yes, Billy, I'll share my examples in the chat. So to Jack's question, she said, how was it received, right? John sounds like his was a win. Mine was completely mixed. Half of the people would stop me in the hall and gush. Oh man, this was so much fun. Why can't they all be like that? My head got huge. Just, yeah, I'm sweet. I'm awesome. And then the other half stop me in the hall and say, I know what you were trying to do. Don't ever do that again. I've got people working in offices with speakers or headphones, and it was a good fit for them. I got people working on the floor. They need to do their training on break and lunch, when they're away from their and they just want to take it and be done. So the next one I did, this one was actually, I'm not sharing again. Let's do that again. and I don't want to take too much time because there are people way smarter than me on this call. But I do want to show how I tried to answer that with my next game, which is it's Camp Kiliwaka. It's a zombie survival horror game, and but I started with an animation. We're out in the woods. The zombies are going to attack our camp. And then I had actually the guy that stopped me in the hall. I created him in Viand and I imported him into the project. And as I'm trying to set the mood, he stomps on there and goes, what is this? This isn't one of those stupid John Rock Stronger GMPs type trainings, is it? I'm kind of like, yeah. And so he goes off, and then basically you got two choices. If you click normal learning, he will animate off and you'll follow him. You'll take the blue pill and you'll go to a standard click nexter. So I was like, I'm giving an off ramp for the people that don't like this style, right? And then if you click on the red pill, you get to see, he says, good luck with that later, nerds. And he is off. And then you get to see how deep the rabbit hole goes. And then for this game, I took a print and play tabletop board game that had its own engine. I translated it into the storyline, and let me see if I can skip to the end of the cinematic. So here's your players. So here we start off in round 1. Notice in the bottom left, we've got zombies killed, 0 out of 10. Barricade, hit points, 10 out of 10. Truck repair, 0%. Zombie spawn, level 1. So I'm going to get my characters in here. The zombies approach. And to start off, only 2 zombies spawn out of the woods, right? And now here's my 4 characters. And I've got sliders up here, and you can assign them to shoot the zombies. You can assign them to repair the fence or to repair the truck, right? This tells you the rules over here on the right. You kill a zombie on a roll of 3 or better. You fix barricade on 3 or better. And you fix a truck on a 5 or better. If you kill 10 zombies, you get a reward. 0 barricade, you lose. And if you fix truck to 100%, you drive off and win. So, and then the higher the level the truck repair, the more zombies will start spawning. So like the difficulty ramps up. So like to begin with, I could have 2 people shooting zombies and 2 people fixing the truck. So I put them where I want them, and then I click my assign button. Now, before I can roll the dice, I have to answer a true-false question. And I got it orange just for the purpose of the demo, because I'm not actually trying to teach any of you guys about this stuff. But once you answer their quiz questions, the button switches from try to roll. You know, what have you seen insect in your area? You're going to do everything except for chase coworkers around with it, pretend you don't see it, or kill it and dispose of the body. And here's Lisa. And each of the characters has questions from a different category of, you know, the learning that I'm trying to do. So they're topical, right? Well, actually, let's get this one wrong so you can see what happens for Brittany. So now I've got rolls, and when you click on the button, it animates dice coming in, and this is actually randomly number generated. So you are actually playing the game, and you can, you know, have success or you can fail. But notice when we get to Brittany, no matter what the dice rolls, she gets a zombie because she got her quiz question wrong, right? So if you want to succeed, you have to get the quiz question right. But even if you do get it right, it may not work, right? So you can lose the game but still get credit, right? Like you could if you answer all the questions correctly, but you just have bad luck and the zombies kill you. So here we shot 1 zombie, so that's good. So the zombie that was left smacks the fence. We only take 1 hit point of barricade damage. You know, barricade gets to 0, they come in and they eat you. Truck gets to 100, you drive off. And I have a little animation for each of those as well. And then I wanted to put, you know, because I'm a gamer, I wanted to put power-ups in there. So, you know, 10 zombies you killed, you get to pick one of these. You can get explosive arrows. You can immediately fix the fence. You can stop any zombies from spawning, you know. And then I'll just do another quick round. I think after round 2, you get to the microtransactions.
So how many, we're going to come back to the same question I asked John Hill. How many variables are you using in this particular storyline, and how are you tracking them?
I am keeping a crap ton. Each one of the ones you see down there, the zombies, you know, how many zombies are going to spawn each round? How much damage does the barricade have out of 10? how much is the truck repaired, and then how many zombies should spawn, and they play into each other. Like when truck gets to 20%, now I'm going to spawn one more zombie each round. How much damage do your arrows do? Normally, arrows would just kill one zombie, but if you unlock the explosive arrows, then each time you get a success, you're going to kill 2 zombies. So there's a lot of variables, and it's not one where you figure it all the way out and then you just easily build this. I don't know if John's the same way as me, but like you start building it, and then you get something to work, and then you're happy, and then you put the next part into it. So here's my microtransaction, and this is actually you may recognize the design of it. It looks like the microtransactions in Raid Shadow Legends. I got different pictures in the background, but you can purchase. It's a random reward. You can get a max fence. You can kill 3 zombies. You can get 1 round of the explosive arrows, or you can, I think I called it metric system tools, and you can repair the truck faster. And it says slides $4.99, right? So you don't have to do this. You can close it and keep playing. But if you make a purchase of 5 slides, now this is where I bring in the actual informational slides that you're going to go through. And if I'm just going to speed through, but if you read all the slides, then you get a random reward. And this is my animation. And it's, again, random number generated. Hey, we got the metric tools. We can repair on a 4 or better when we use them that turn. And so we close it. And let me get the rules out of the way again. And let's assign the people. And you'll notice over here on the left, if I want to activate any of my power-ups, I can click that, and then that'll change the variable for that turn. So that's the game. You can win it or lose it. But I felt like this was an improvement over the last one because the people had a choice. What I wasn't able to do, and Jay Hill was doing his best to help me, was we were trying to track who chose the blue pill versus the red pill. And hopefully for the next game, we'll be able to get that working. But yeah, those are my examples. And I'm going to stop sharing now.
There's a question in the chat. Besides Storyline and Beyond, what tools did you use to create other animations and game mechanics?
So for this one, there was an itch.io bundle that came out called the Bundle for Racial Justice and Harmony right after the George Floyd incident. And so I bought that bundle, and it came with a ton of assets. But even if you don't get that bundle, itch.io has stuff. There's a website called opengameart.ai that has royalty-free stuff you can use. And then, and worst comes to worst, like with the GMP one, the Stranger Things one, I created all of that art in PowerPoint, and then just made animated GIFs out of it. So, yeah, you can get crafty. It'll take longer, but you can do it for free if you don't want to buy some big software.
Awesome.
I put the links in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, breaking the magician's code, was I? Sorry about that, Jay Hill.
That's funny. So, question, after this deployed, similar to Jack's question earlier, did you get the same kind of feedback? Like, did you appease kind of both sides of the base of people going through it by having the 2 options? I know you said you couldn't track it, which is fine, but just your feedback that you got after that launched, was it any different than your stronger GMPs?
The game itself was very difficult in the zombie one, and so a lot of the people that came up and mentioned on it were just frustrated that like they got all the quiz question right and still lost the game. And so I don't know what to say to those other than, get good, bro. I mean, that's the thing with a game is there's so much out of your hands, right? And games are on a continuum, right? Like there's completely random, like Candyland, which you have no choice. It's just whatever card you turn over is your fate, right? And then on the other hand, there'd be something like chess on the other end of the spectrum where there's like nothing random. It's all choice. So how do you find that fun interaction between random things the world can do and meaningful choices the player can make? And I don't see that there is a meaningful choice if there aren't consequences. And that means a fail state. And that forces people to take your game serious.
All right, going back over here to the questions. There was a great question here about if we've done a pre-assessment and then branched to sections that people didn't pass. I have an example of that, but I wanted to defer to the three of you if you had an example you want to talk through first. Okay. When I was in manufacturing, again, that's when I was in an enterprise, we had some safety courses that we needed to make sure that people had information specifically around donning and doffing of PPE. And so for that one, I mean, that's either you know it or you don't, and again, very critical to the work that they did there in the plant. So with that one, they're actually on the articulate communities, there was a great template to get you started if you have no idea how to even think about the way that you branch that. But basically it started with kind of that pre-test, and then depending, I had it like different stories that would, or scenes rather, that would go to the content if they needed it, or it would go back. But very similar to J-Rock's use case, it was an annual compliance refresher, so it shouldn't be the first time that they saw that content because they wore various PPE daily to do their work. So it was just one of those things that had a little bit more leeway. I think that'd be a little bit more difficult to do if it was their first time experiencing the content, but I think it's a little bit easier to build something like that when it is a refresher. I'll pause. Anybody have anything else on that one?
I just would say that like that is going to be your number one comment when you share this kind of stuff on LinkedIn or wherever. And I'm sure Jonathan Hill's got the battle scars for, because he shared more awesome stuff like this than anyone. Sometimes, like especially with e-learning heroes, like the whole point of it is, hey, can you make something along this theme in the software? And then brilliant people post amazing examples, and trolls, absolute trolls, get on and say, I don't see the learning value of this. And then it's like, so you're always going to have people saying they equate, I don't know why they equate fun with unprofessional, or they equate fun with funny, but not all fun is funny.
No, I'd agree there. I think there's an opportunity to make functional fun. If you think about when you lose your internet connection and you suddenly get the dinosaur game. I'm not suggesting you put a dinosaur game in all of your courses, but there are elements of the user interface that can be fun without them being funny, without you being ridiculous about it. And you need to, context is everything. So a lot of examples you see might be divorced of context. You need to appreciate the audience that you're developing for, and ultimately the way you're treating the material respects the material, but also highlights the learning objectives that you need to hit, and where you need sometimes somewhat facile recall of facts and figures. The repetition and reward mechanism of a game style environment can lend itself very well to that. But there's certainly topics I would not even touch in this way. I'm not going to do a choose your own adventure text-based sexual harassment storyline course. That's never going to happen. You need to anticipate the audience's reaction to the way you're presenting the topic, and give the topic the respect and oxygen it needs for people to engage with it.
Yeah, I actually have a good example of kind of the seriousness. I'm currently a freelance consultant, and so one of my clients is in the medical space, and so they have some really sensitive topics that I want to do justice to kind of present. I'm going to put a link here in the chat, but I found this game. It's a mobile app, and it's a game called That Dragon Cancer, and so it is about a parent losing a child to cancer, and I mean just the heartbreak and the agony of obviously going through a process like that, because this medical client that I serve, I mean, they talk about very dark topics of, as we age and as we're getting close to, kind of the end and that kind of stuff. So I think, again, going back to kind of the theme of this conference and going back to games, I think that there is a way that you can still have kind of that gamified elements, but still have the respect and dignity that a topic deserves in that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that, Cara. I think, I know that our time is almost up here, but when we think about taking a gamified experience to our corporate, I kind of look at it like you can get away with games and have lots of fun, and it's a cool learning experience, and games are amazing for children, right? But then once you get beyond that K to 12, how do we sell to our stakeholders that including a game is a good thing in the learning? Like, I know, Cara, you and I have had this conversation where a few years back, everything we saw at a conference was all about the escape room, right? But an escape room is a game, and it can be an effective game when you put it together and you share it with your stakeholders and you have meaningful content and it helps the audience to perform better or do their job better or help customers solve the customers' problems, whatever it is that we're trying to solve with this training, right? There has to be purpose to it. I think most of the time it can't just be included because, oh, we needed to have something fun. We needed to have a good experience. So, selling it to stakeholders, especially for me, I think I'm the oldest one on our panel. So for me, it's been a real hard sell, trying to sell including games to stakeholders who never grew up playing games, playing video games, playing board games. So that's a hard sell. You have to think about that. Who are you selling to and how are you going to sell that? It needs to be in the learning.
But a lot of the people that we're hiring, are from a cohort, a digital, they grew up with games. They have they hit different for them. They're expected. And when they see the type of, I think for me, the biggest draw for using video game mechanics is that there is something immediately engaging that draws your focus and your attention. And that's like the first step for any type of training or learning. So the question is, how do we incorporate those without overpowering the message? Right? How do we use the power of it to focus the mind where we want it to go instead of making something that all they're going to remember is, oh, that was a cool looking car on the second scene.
Yeah. Yep.
Has to be carefully configured and very strategic. I think I would underline as saying too. But I hope people have had some inspiration from what we've talked about today.
Thanks, Cara, for inviting us along for this fun time.
No, it's the man, the myth, the legend, Luis, that made this happen.
Oh my gosh. It's actually everyone in the Slack group that helped put this one together. But I do love seeing all your faces in one place. That's like the funnest part. And J-Rock, you can't do that to me. It's like every time you have no idea how much I like sit in the background just cracking up whenever you're on screen. But thanks everyone for joining us. We have coming up in just 5 minutes. Stephen Bear from ELB is going to be talking about storytelling and game design. So he's actually waiting in the other room now. So everyone, please feel free to take just a quick little break and then join us for that next one. I know it's going to be fantastic. And again, J-Rock, Jacqueline, Cara, Jonathan Hill, thank you so much for joining us. And I hope to see you guys. Maybe, I don't know, you're going to be in Vegas this year?
For sure.
Yep.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. All right. Then I can't wait to see you there. And with that, closing it out. We'll see everybody in the next one. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.